Time now for my exclusive interview with political genius Donald Trump's former White House strategist Steve Bannon. And it's a momentous night, not only for American politics, but also the very fabric of the United States, right? This witch hunt against America's 45th president is extraordinary, unprecedented, and I think alarming. Trump has pledged to fight on in the face of what he calls the deep state attack, trying to terminate his second crack at the White House. But one man who knows him best is the political war general who helped carve Trump's incredible and against the odds 2016 election win. Steve Bannon, the American media executive who fronts Bannon's War Room podcast, joins me live now. So, Steve, we've heard the Trump judge has just arrived in D.C., so this is all kicking off this hour. Do you think the witch hunt of Donald Trump, though, could actually enhance his chances at the election?
Dan, thank you so much for the kind words. I don't really deserve it, but thank you. Yes, I think, and right now, even as we speak, the magistrate judge is going through the process right now in the courtroom and going through the charges. I think you're seeing here the law of unintended consequences. We welcome this day. We welcome the full throwdown of the administrative and deep state coming after President Trump and the Trump movement, the populist nationalist movement that is ascendant in our country. And I got to tell you, if they had anything, they were to charge him with sedition or with insurrection. They didn't. They have these four kind of bizarre charges. They have to do backflips. But here's the great news, and for your audience, we have been looking for a venue to fully adjudicate the stealing of the election in 2020, and they've given it to us. Two things are going to happen in this trial. We get to fully adjudicate the 2020 election because they made it, everything they've done is contingent upon him willingly and knowingly believe that he didn't win the election. We can show that he did win the election and that he believed it. In addition, the whole issue about January 6th and what we call the Fedsurrection. A tape just got put up today by Raheem Kassam on his site, Tucker Carlson's interview with the chief of Capitol Hill Police that the Murdochs and Fox News suppressed just came out, where the chief of police is saying, hey, this is a cover-up. This was a quasi-government operation, and we intend to adjudicate that in this trial. So we welcome this. The MAGA movement welcomes this. We're going to fight this, and it also is going to help initiate the impeachment inquiry, which I think you'll see in the next 2 weeks. The formal impeachment inquiry on Joe Biden will commence.
Donald Trump Jr. Has said that this charade has turned the US into a banana republic. Obviously, Steve, there'll be lots of folk in the media saying, well, you can't prove it. Trump can't prove it. So how is he going to fight this in the trial?
We can prove it. That's the whole thing. Remember, we haven't had a venue. When they talk about, 96 cases, they never actually let us show the evidence. Here, we're going to show the evidence because it's central to their case. Two things are central to their case, and this is where Jack Smith, I think, screwed up the other day when he announced this. He made a big deal about the violence that went on January 6th. That brings January 6th, the actual what happened on January 6th, and quite frankly, why Nancy Pelosi and these people turned down any type of security. That brings that into the case. We will fully adjudicate that. In addition, they made the predicate of this that Trump knew he lost and pressed on with this, with the exact opposite. He knew he won. We will be able to bring in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan and Georgia, Arizona, and maybe throw in Nevada for good measure. But this is going to be, we're going to put before the American people in the world the facts of the 2020 and show the world the illegitimate regime of Joe Biden simultaneously when we're impeaching him for selling out our nation, for high treason, for selling out our nation for money to the Chinese Communist Party.
Steve, we've just heard that Donald Trump has, at this moment, pleaded not guilty to all counts in court. Obviously, you were expecting that.
Yes, sir. We not just not guilty. We're going to turn the tables. We're going to turn the guns around on these guys and make sure they understand that the American people are not going to tolerate.
Not literally, though.
On one hand, somebody who metaphor, yes. Somebody who tried to see. This is the whole thing with it. If you try to just use terms of speech,
I know
they weaponize.
Oh, I know, Steve. They weaponize. No, that's why I just wanted to clarify. I get it.
But I tell you, for the audience in Great Britain,
yes,
throughout the world that watch your show, we don't care. We are coming for these guys. We're coming for the administrative state. We're not about to allow our constitutional republic that we fought such a glorious revolution against you guys to form. We're not going to allow this.
Let's not go there tonight.
globalist deep state. We're going to fight this all the way, and we're going to be vindicated.
Obviously, Steve, lots of people in your own party or in the Republican Party who don't agree, including members or former members of the Trump administration. So I want to get you to respond to a couple of them. The former US National Security Advisor John Bolton has made headlines today for saying that the best thing Trump could now do for America is to pull out of the presidential race and prevent a constitutional crisis. Is there any chance of him doing that, Steve?
There's zero. And in fact, we want to force this constitutional crisis. We have to lance the boil. The problem with Bolton, remember the witness for the prosecution, I think is going to be Mike Pence. I think it's quite evident that Mike Pence, the Murdochs, by the way, the Murdochs, the big donors, the elite of the uniparty, of the controlled opposition of the Republican Party are absolutely 100% on the side of the prosecution here. We understand that. We're going to fight the populist nationalist movement. This is like Brexit to the power of 10. Yeah. The populist nationalist movement in our country is not going to back down, and we are not going to let a bunch of donors and the corrupt foreigners named the Murdochs sit there and try to steal our country from us. The biggest fight we have initially is against the Republican establishment.
Interesting that you mention Mike Pence, because it's very clear that he is about to throw his old boss under the bus amid the scandal, despite the fact that he himself ramped up fears of a rigged election just a few years ago. Watch this, Stephen. I'll get you to respond off the back.
Let's be clear on this point. It wasn't just that they asked for a pause. The president specifically asked me, and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked me to literally reject votes, which would have resulted in the issue being turned over to the House of Representatives, and literally chaos would have ensued.
You know, I know we all got our doubts about the last election, and I want to assure you, I share the concerns of millions of Americans about voting irregularities.
Steve, is Pence a patriot or a snake?
Judas Pence took us 30 pieces of silver from the Kochs, and he will pay a political price for it. This is why he's polling at about 2%. Mike Pence had full authority. Remember, the Electoral Count Act of 1887, of which the establishment changed in the omnibus bill just a couple of months ago in the dark of night, control this. Nobody asked him to change anything. What he was supposed to do is respond to state legislatures, send the delegates back, send the electors back for full certification at the state legislatures, and that's all he was supposed to do. It's not a ceremonial post. It is not a ceremony. This will be argued in court. It's certainly not a ceremonial post. It is as they changed the law, but not the law that governed at the time, the Electoral Count Act of 1887. Mike Pence is one of the most gutless cowards I've ever met in my entire life, and he will rue the day. He will rue the day that he sit there and lying about the MAGA movement and lying about the people around President Trump and lying about President Trump.
Steve, can we just talk about the practicalities of how the Trump campaign will work in the midst of this? Because you can imagine we're watching this from the UK thinking, what on earth is a campaign going to look like with the prospect of the Republican nominee being in court, fighting for his liberty for a long portion of the time, potentially in the latter stages of the campaign behind bars?
Zero chance he'll be behind bars. But it's going to be quite interesting. The campaign gets stronger every day. All the polling has come out of the weekend. Not only shows him 40 or 50 points ahead in the primary. And the primary is only going on because the Murdochs wanted to go on Fox News. Just remember that. In the general election right now, he's polling ahead. In most polls, he's polling ahead of Biden. His strength, we're consolidating that strength every day. So he will continue to do rallies. He will continue to do town halls. He will continue to drive this as his lawyers and others, as we put together the case to show that the 2020 election was stolen and that this was not an insurrection, it was a Fedsurrection, and prove it in federal court.
Okay, so what's
and galvanize the nation.
Finally, Steve, what's your message to Ron DeSantis? Because it feels like he's staying in the race to wait for a Trump implosion. Are you calling on him to drop out?
Look, the most thorough thing to happen to Ron DeSantis proved the world is when he went to the city of London about 2 months ago, and all the papers and everybody I talked to said they waited and measured him in the city of London at that meeting and said, this guy's not up to the task. His polling's dropped from then. Ron DeSantis is a total non-event at this. He can hang out all he wants. He just ruined his career for 2028. The Keebler elves, I call all these guys the Keebler elves. They're totally and completely irrelevant. They can either drop out or we'll force them out. They can take it's their choice, but they're irrelevant. The only thing that matters right now is taking on the Democratic and the uniparty opposition, which will probably be, I think right now, Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama or something like that. Will not be Joe Biden.
It's not going to be Biden. Not going to be Biden, is it? It can't be. It can't be, given his mental state. Steve Bannon, former chief executive of Trump's 2016 campaign and chief strategist during some of his time in the White House, now host of the War Room. Thank you so much for joining us on this historic night. Trump, let me remind you, has pled not guilty. He is currently in a court in Washington, D.C. You know we give you both sides of the story here on GB News. So on Trump's claims the election was rigged, the president and his allies filed 62 lawsuits in state and federal courts seeking to overturn election results in states the president lost, according to Mark Elias, a Democratic election lawyer who is tracking the outcomes. Out of the 62 lawsuits filed challenging the presidential election, 61 have failed, according to Elias. Some cases were dismissed for lack of standing and others based on the merits of the voter fraud allegations. The decisions have come from both Democratic-appointed and Republican-appointed judges, including federal judges appointed by Trump. There you go.